Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol.
Hare Krishna, dear devotees, Dandat Pranam. Please give us few minutes. We are just confirming why did the temple devotees log in and open the Zoom, the audio and the video, because we are supposed to have a class by yesterday. Rama, Govinda and Prabhu. Just give us few minutes and Krishna Prabhu is live. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna devotees, yes, sorry for the confusion. So we'll continue with our class. Hare Krishna, Rama, Govinda, Ratisa, Prabhu, Dandat Pranam, welcome.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dandat Pranam.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandat Pranam. We welcome Ram Govinda Ratisa Prabhu. Thank you, Prabhuji, for giving us your association. He'll be sharing Bhagavata from 4th canto, 24th chapter, 13, 14, and 15 verses from the chapter titled Chanting the Song Sung by Lord Shiva. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, please start.
Hare Krishna, thank you so much, Prabhu. Prabhu, will you be able to present the verse on the screen? Will it be possible?
Yeah, I'll start to share.
Okay. Okay, we'll start with the pranama mantras. Om Ajnanatimidandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Gadamahyam Tadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunata Vittam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Deva Shri Radha Krishna Pada Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhavitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Okay, welcome everyone to today's session. We'll start with the Srimad Bhagavatam session. We are going to discuss about the 4th canto, 24th chapter, 13th text onwards. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay, so Prabhu, will you be able to increase the font size a little bit? If you don't mind, because I'm on the phone, so...
Sure.
Yeah.
Is this good, Prabhu?
Yes, Prabhu. Yes, this is good. So today, we are discussing about the conversation between Maitreya Rishi and Vidura. So we will read the shlokas and we will try to read the translations and get to the deeper meaning of what each of these shlokas actually mean. Now, we'll start with the verse. The verse is Prachina Barisha Putra Shatadrutyam dashabhavan tulya nama vrita sarve dharmasnata prachetasaha. So the meaning is Prachina Barisha of King Prachina Barhi, Putra, sons, Shatadrutyam, in the womb of Shatadruti, Dasha, 10, Abhavan, became manifest, Tulya Nama, Tulya equally, Nama, name, Vrata, vow, Sarve, all, Dharma, religiosity, Snata, completely merged in, Prachetasaha, all of them being designated as Prachetas. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. King Prachina Barhi begot 10 children in the womb of Shatadruti. All of them were equally endowed with religiosity and all of them were known as Prachetas. Purport. The word Dharmasnata is significant for the 10 children were all merged in the practice of religion. In addition, they possessed all good qualities. One is supposed to be perfect when one is perfectly religious, perfect in the execution of one's vows to render devotional service, perfect in knowledge, perfect in good behavior, and so on. All the Prachetas were on the same level of perfection. So we'll discuss this verse first, and then we go to the next verse and the following verse. So we have 3 verses to cover today. We'll start with the 13th verse. So we have read the translation and purport. So if you see this particular verse, the most important word here, which it starts with dharma. So if you see King Prachina Barhi, and before we get into this particular verse, just a small summary that in the past you would have heard in the previous sessions, you would have heard that Maharaj Barishat was actually known as Prachina Barhi, and he had instructions of Brahma to marry Shatadruti, the daughter of the ocean. So now Shatadruti and Prachina Barhi, they are married, and from there on we are going to discuss in this particular verse. So if you see that in this particular verse, the discussion is about Prachina Barhi and Shatadruti have begotten 10 children. So they are blessed with 10 children, and these 10 children are known as Prachetas. So in the purport, Srila Prabhupada writes that Dharmasnata is a very significant word. So what is the meaning of Dharmasnata? Dharmasnata means Dharma is religiosity and Snata means completely merged in. So somebody who is completely merged in religiosity is actually called as the word Dharmasnata means these 10 children were completely merged in religiosity. So we have to understand that in today's world, the definition of being perfect, there are so many definitions which are given to being a man or a perfect woman. But the definition of perfection as per Srimad Bhagavatam is mentioned here that one is supposed to be called as perfect when he's perfectly religious. So we have to understand that what is the meaning of this perfectly religious. Second, what about the vows? Being perfect in rendering the vow, in execution of the vows to render devotional service. So there are different qualifications of perfection. One is the person who's perfectly religious, the person who's perfectly able to execute the vows that he has taken to execute his devotional service. So the vows at the time of initiation, whatever vows you would have taken, so those are the vows you have to execute perfectly. So that is perfection, another kind of perfection. Then the perfection in knowledge. So somebody who's complete in knowledge. Knowledge of what? Not knowledge of the self, but knowledge of the relation between self and the supreme. Next, perfect in good behavior. So not only do you need perfection in the other 3 aspects which we said, but also at the same time, after learning these things, you should be able to show it by character or by behavior. So all the Prachetas, if you see, the Prachetas are the 10 children of Prachina Barhi and Shatadruti. So these 10 children had all these perfect qualities. Hence, they are called as Dharmasnata, or they are completely immersed in practicing religion. So now we have to understand that the word dharma has been mentioned many places, even in the Bhagavad Gita. The first verse of Bhagavad Gita itself starts with Dharma Kshetra Kurukshetra Samaveta Yoyotsavaha. So the first verse in the Bhagavad Gita itself starts with dharma. So Dharma Kshetra, a place where the religious rituals are performed. So it's a religious place. It's very clearly mentioned. It's not a city or it's not a town or something like that. It's a religious place. So dharma has many references in the Shastras. One, as I said, in the beginning of Bhagavad Gita itself, the dharma reference you can see. Next, in Bhagavad Gita, further, you see in the 3rd chapter also, there are many verses which you can, pick up this word dharma. But I'm just talking about a few significant verses which I thought will be relevant here. So in the 3rd chapter, 35th verse, we have Shreyan Swadharmo Vigunaha Paradharmat Swanushtita Swadharme Nidhanam Shreya Paradharmo Bhayavaha. So Shreyan Swadharmo. So Swadharma, a person has his own dharma. So now what are the dharmas we are talking about? We are not talking about dharma working in some software company or working in some other, running a business or something like that. It's about dharma, Kshatriya, Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudras. So basically this, the Varna Ashrama, a person who has a particular, who's from a particular Varna is expected to do his duty based on that particular Varna than try and imitate somebody else who is from a different Varna. So a Brahmana should not try to imitate a Kshatriya. Kshatriya should not try to imitate a Brahmana unless, so there is one exception to this. So Srila Prabhupada in the same verse, he says that when you're on the material platform, you should stick to your particular dharma. So if you're a Brahmana, you should act as a Brahmana if you're on the material plane. And if you're a Kshatriya, you should act as a Kshatriya or a Vaishya or a Shudra. But the moment you become when you transcend the modes of material nature, when you're beyond the levels of material nature or beyond the Sattva, Tama, Rajas, when you have overlapped them, then what you can do is you can actually, you don't have to be, since you're no more under the control of the material nature, you can actually interchange your particular dharma. So if you're in the material, if you're under the influence of the material modes of nature, then you have to act according to your dharma. But the exception is if you have transcended or if you have bypassed or if you have transcended the modes of material nature, then you can act in another dharma as well. So this is the classification basically. Now, why am I telling this? I'm telling this because dharma, the reference of dharma is given in many places. Next, even in Manusmriti, we have all heard about this verse which says that Dharmo Rakshati Rakshitaha. So now in Manusmriti, this particular verse comes in Manusmriti 8.5. It says, Dharma eva hato hanti, dharmo rakshati rakshitaha, tasmad dharmo na hantavyo, mano dharmo hato vadid. So what does this mean? So dharma eva hato hanti, dharmo rakshati rakshitaha. So dharma only destroys those who destroy it. So if we try to uphold dharma or religiosity, then that dharma or religiosity will always protect us. That is what this particular verse says. Similarly, if we don't, the first line actually means that if you don't uphold dharma or if you don't uphold the religiosity, then the same dharma will destroy you. So we should be confident, completely confident of this particular, these sections or these verses in Bhagavad Gita or in the Manusmriti or in any of our scriptures, which very clearly says that dharma will protect us. So our most important duty is to make sure that we are all dharma snyata. That means that we are all religiously or we are immersed in religiosity. So this is one lesson. This is one aspect which we can learn from the Prachitas, that they were immersed in religiosity. They were completely submerged in religiosity. And they wanted to execute the vows that to practice devotional service. So this is what we get to know in the first verse. So we go to the next verse. In the next verse, we will discuss about. But before we go to the next verse, again, there are many qualities of a devotee. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says that there are 26 qualities of a devotee by which he's considered as a perfect devotee. So you can see here that actually perfection, like Prabhupada says in this particular, in the previous verse, what you're seeing on the screen is not the, I think you're seeing the 14th verse. The previous verse, the 13th verse, Srila Prabhupada says that the Prachitas are perfect. So they're perfectly executing religiosity, they're perfect in knowledge, they're perfect in their vows, and they're perfect in good behavior. And all of them are all the 10 children are on the same level of perfection. So this is what Srila Prabhupada says. So it can be easily understood that they had all the qualities of a devotee of the Lord. And what are the qualities of devotee of the Lord? Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says that there are 26 qualities of the devotee of the Lord, that he's kind to everyone, he does not quarrel with anyone, he's fixed in the absolute, he's equal to everyone, and there are many other things that, other 26 aspects of a pure devotee of the Lord, which can be found in the Prachitas also. So now the two things are answered. One is Dharma Snata, which means that one should be completely immersed in religiosity. Next is to be completely immersed in religiosity, you should be perfect in executing your devotional service. So how do you perfectly execute your devotional service? By developing the 26 qualities which Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has recommended. Okay, so this concludes the first verse. We'll go to the next verse, which is the 14th verse. Pitra dishta praja sarge tapase nrvamavishan dasha varsha sahasrani tapasarshams tapaspatim. So Pitra, by the father, Adishta, being ordered by, Praja Sarge, in the matter of begetting children, Tapase, for executing austerity, Arnavam, in the ocean, Avishan, entered, Dasha Varsha, 10 years, Sahasrani, such thousands, Tapasa, by their austerity, Archan, worshipped, Tapa, of austerity, Patim, the master. So we'll go to the translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So when all the Prachitas were ordered by their father to marry and beget children, they all entered the ocean and practiced austerities and penances for 10,000 years. Thus, they worship the master of all austerity, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So we can see here that the Prachitas, actually, they have been ordered by their father. It's not a request, but it's an order. So we have to understand that what is the order? The order is to marry and beget children. So this is one thing we have to discuss about. Why marriage? And if marriage, then what is the purpose of marriage? So there are so many discussions on this, but we can see here this verse very clearly talks about the purpose of marriage. Okay. Next, the second aspect which you can see from the translation of Srila Prabhupada is even for an activity like marriage, sometimes we think that marriage does it require tapasya or does it require austerity? We usually ignore that particular fact, but we see that everything is the blessing of the Lord. Everything is actually in the control of the Lord. Now, if everything is in the control of the Lord, then we have to actually take the permission of the Lord. We have to have the the consent of the Lord. We should have the blessings from the Lord. That is the reason why the Prachitas actually were asked to, the Prachitas actually worship the Supreme Lord. So there are two aspects. One, marriage and the reason for marriage. Second is the master of all, worshipping the master of all austerity, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Let's read the purport. Sometimes great sages and ascetics enter the Himalaya mountains in order to, Prabhu, can you just scroll down? Okay, I can see, sorry. Sometimes great sages and ascetics enter the Himalaya mountains in order to find seclusion from the turmoil of the world. It appears, however, that all the Prachitas, the sons of Prachina Barhi, entered the depths of the ocean to perform austerity in a secluded place. Since they performed austerities for 10,000 years, this incident took place in the Satya Yuga when people used to live for 100,000 years. It is also significant that by their austerity, they worshipped the master of austerity, Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So in the Satya Yuga, so in every age, there was one kind of practice which was prescribed, and in each age there are different practices prescribed. For example, in the Satya Yuga, it was more of meditation or meditating on the Supreme Lord for thousands of years. So it is not possible if a lifespan of a person is less, and it is also mentioned that somebody is meditating for hundreds of thousands of years. So 10,000 years of meditation, which means that in the current age, the brahmacharya ashram, not in the current age, but yes, in the Vedic tradition, up to 25 years, the children were trained in the matter of culture, in the matter of dharma, in the matter of controlling of senses. 25 years of their life was exclusively used for that particular activity, so that in the next phase of life, that is, if they have an option either to continue the brahmacharya, or if they plan to enter the grihastha ashrama, then they should be able to execute the requirements of grihastha ashrama as prescribed in shastras, and not to let the senses loose. So the first 25 years was the training period, where training was given how to control your senses, how to control your mind, and how to progress in spiritual life. So we have to understand here also that here, if you see the fraction of in Satya Yuga, so if you see, it's almost the same. Like here in Kali Yuga, we have maybe a maximum of 70 to 80 years of life, good life, healthy life, I'm talking about. So after 80 years, usually the body deteriorates. But in a healthy span of 80 years, if somebody is practicing 20 years or 25 years of the brahmacharya ashram, then he is actually qualified to lead the rest of his life. He is supposed to be understood to have all the qualities to lead the rest of his life in a very spiritual manner. So here also we can see that just for the sake of fulfilling the desire of their father, Prachina Barhi, the Prachitas actually have decided to go under the water and perform tapasya, austerity, for 10,000 years. So sometimes we think that why is it required? Just for marriage, does somebody have to do tapasya for 10,000 years? But yes, for anyone, for any activity to be successful, it can only happen by the sanction of the Lord. So those who are expert in dharma, or those who know, like we already read in the previous verse, that they are dharmasnata, which means that they are perfect in religiosity. And if they are expert in religiosity, they know that any activity that they do, whether they are in brahmacharya ashram or grihastha ashram, or whatever objective they have to achieve, that can be achieved only by the sanction of the Supreme Lord. So now here we can see that I'm looking at the fifth line here. It is also significant that by their austerity, they worship the master of austerity, Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. If one wants to perform austerities and penances in order to attain the supreme goal, one must attain the favor of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. If one achieves the favor of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, it is to be understood that he has finished all kinds of austerities and penances and has attained efficiency in their execution. On the other hand, if one does not perfect the stage of devotional service, all austerities and penances actually have no meaning. For without the Supreme Lord, no one can attain the highest results derived from performing them. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 5, text 29, Lord Sri Krishna is the master of all penances and sacrifices. Bhoktaram yakya tapasam sarvaloka maheshwaram. Thus, the desired result of performing austerities may be derived from Lord Krishna. Can you scroll down, Prabhu? In the Srimad Bhagavatam, the 3.33, the third canto, 33rd chapter, 7th verse, it is stated that Aho batasva pachoto gariyan ya jivagre vartate nama tubhyam te pus tapas te juhubu shashnurarya brahma nochur nama grananti yete. Even if a person is born in a family of chandalas, the lowest birth one can get in human society, he is glorious if he chants the holy name of the Lord. For it is to be understood that by such chanting, a great devotee, it is to be understood, but by such chanting, a devotee definitely proves that he underwent all kinds of austerities in his previous life. By the grace of Lord Chaitanya, one who chants the Maha Mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, attains the highest perfectional stage which has previously been attained by people who entered the ocean and executed austerities for 10,000 years. In this age of Kali, if a person does not take advantage of chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, which is offered as a great concession to the fallen human beings of this age, it is to be understood that he is very much bewildered by the illusory energy of the Lord. So we'll discuss in detail of this particular verse. Now, like I said earlier, so there are two things most important in this particular verse, which is the Prachitas were ordered by their father, Prachina Barhi, to marry and beget children. So the goal is very clear. Next. So what did the Prachitas do? The Prachitas went ahead and they worshipped the master of austerity, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna. Now, let's look at it from a Grihastha ashram point of view. Okay, so the importance of Grihastha ashram and importance of Krishna conscious children is very important in upliftment of any society. So we have to understand that without the presence of a Grihastha ashram, so we are not trying to establish a supremacy of any particular ashram here, but we are saying that if there are no children, that means that in future we don't have devotees. So children of devotees are the people who are the torch bearers in the future. So we have to understand that if Krishna conscious devotees who are in the Grihastha ashram, they don't have children, that means that the whole purpose of establishing dharma is nullified. So we cannot expect the society to be at peace if we don't have devotees of the Lord. So we are also already seeing that there is a lot of turmoil in the society. Daily we hear news about wars, about quarrels, and for such silly issues, we are hearing that there is so much of disturbance in the society. So we have to understand that all this is happening because we don't have children who are growing up in the matter of religion. So Prachitas are actually a perfect example of how children should be and how the family or the parents should actually push the children into religiosity. So first is the parents should practice, and then they should have, when they are practicing in the process, they will also have children who are practicing because they are in a favorable environment, and by leading a life in a favorable environment, they are more or less having a good chance to execute devotional service perfectly. And by seeing them, if we have the more number of people we have like this in the society, the chances are that the society will be in a very peaceful state if we have more number of devotees of the Lord in the society. Okay, so now as far as Grihastha ashram is concerned, we have seen that of late there are marriages which are happening, but Grihasthas refuse. I mean, one is biologically there may be a reason why some of them may not have children, but it is not recommended that in the Shastras also it is not recommended that you marry for a purpose of not having children. So what is the use of marriage if there is no need of children? So anybody who's married, who's a Grihastha, must have children. This is what is very clearly mentioned. I'm not saying this, but Prachina Barhi is saying this, that get married and beget children to his children. So we have to understand very clearly that purpose of marriage is to get children. So anybody in future asks us that, can we get, can we get married and not have a child for our own convenience? Then that is just sense gratification. In fact, my Guru Maharaj says that it is just a matter of legal prostitution. So we should be very careful that, what are we trying to enter into? If we are in the brahmacharya ashram, then it serves the purpose. Why do you want to destroy two people's life by getting into marriage life? See, what happens is there is a boy and a girl. Now both of them are married, and after that, what happens? They don't have a child. Just imagine we have like 300 people in the temple, and there is a there may be 4 or 5 brahmacharis. The percentage of brahmacharis is very less, hardly 1 or 2%. So the remaining percentage are all grihasthas, and if the grihasthas decide not to have children, then what happens? Very clearly, 50 years down the line, the 300 will become maybe 150, because the husband and wife grow old and then they die. They don't have children. What is the use? Who's going to practice? Who's going to take it forward? Yes, we can preach and bring new people. That is a different aspect. But what I'm saying is, out of the people who are there with us, we should make sure that those who are married should take responsibility of children. They should have at least 1 or 2 children, and depending on their capabilities, they should be able to have more children. So here you see that Prachitas are 10. That means that Prachina Barhi has 10 children, and they all depend on the Lord. So every soul, every jiva comes into this world is dependent on the Lord, and the Lord makes the arrangements. So we would have seen practically, if you actually speak to the grihasthas, you will see that whenever a child is born, there are so many facilities which automatically come along with the birth of the child. We would have seen that a person may be not so stable financially, but after a child, sometimes the stability improves. But this is not a guarantee to say that after marriage stability or financial condition improves. It could also be the other way around. But we should treat everything as a mercy of the Lord, and we should understand that if a person has taken birth, then obviously there are arrangements which are also made by the Lord. If the Lord has made a decision by nature, if there is a decision made that if somebody has to take birth in a particular family, that means that there is already some set of arrangements which are already done. It is not accident that somebody takes a birth in some particular family and there are no arrangements done. So we should be very completely confident that if by the law of nature somebody has taken birth in a particular family, then he will be provided certain kinds of facilities based on his karma. But beyond that, it is all based on his practice of dharma. One is karma and the other one is dharma. So if you don't follow dharma, then everything depends on what you have accumulated in the past and what you do currently. Your future depends on that. But if you are following dharma, then as we said earlier, that dharma rakshati rakshita. So dharma will protect you. If you trouble dharma or if you don't follow dharma, then dharma will destroy you. But if you follow dharma, the same dharma will protect you. So this is what is very clearly mentioned. Now, there's also one particular verse we all know that Chanakya Niti Shastra says that putrahinam griham shonyam. So, but if you see the entire verse, it's not just putrahinam griham shonyam, but the entire verse, if you see, it says that avidya jivanam shonyam dikshunyas cha abandhavaha putrahinam griham shonyam sarve shonya daridrata. So we have to understand this in a perspective of having marriage, in the perspective of Grihastha Ashrama. Okay, so avidya jivanam shunyam. Okay, avidya jivanam shunyam. It is very clear that a person without knowledge is a big zero. He is useless. Now, knowledge of what? Knowledge of science, arts, literature, what? No. Knowledge of the self and the relationship of the self with the Supreme. This knowledge, if a person does not have, that person comes under the category of avidya jivanam shunyam. Next. Dikshunyascha abandhavaha. Okay, dikshunyascha abandhavaha, which means that any place is empty which is devoid of friends. So, who is a friend? A friend is actually, there is no better friend than a devotee of the Lord, and the devotees of the Lord are well-wishers of every living entity. So, it's not just a neighbor or a friend. If you see in the material world, a friend means somebody who's in your favor. Somebody who talks on your behalf, in your favor, or somebody who helps you, who's always favorable to you, you consider him as a friend. But a devotee of the Lord is actually favorable to everyone. In fact, an ant or a cat or a dog or everything is very careful. So we have to be very sure that a friend is a person who's a devotee of the Lord. And what does this mean? Dikshunyascha abandhava. So I already said, avidya jivanam shunyam, dikshunyascha abandhavaha. So any place which is devoid of friends or which is devoid of association of the devotees of the Lord is considered as an empty place. So you can have any number of friends, but if they are not devotees of the Lord, if they don't associate with the devotees of the Lord, it is nothing but it's an empty place. Third, it says that putrahinam griham shunyam. Now putra means son. A family without a son or a husband and wife without a son is considered as an empty family, zero. But as far as Krishna consciousness is concerned, now Chanakya Niti is mostly for, on the Shastric point of view, we have to see that this is for the materialists who have to establish, not only materialists, we can as devotees, we can also practice, but at the same time, we have to understand that this is the way the society should be guided. So on these Niti Shastras are given to establish a proper structure and order in the society. So here it says, the third section says, putrahinam griham shunyam. A family without a son is useless, empty. So it's not about just a son. What about daughter? Now somebody asked. Yes, daughter or son. But the point here is that if the child is not Krishna conscious, whether it is a daughter or a son, anyway, the purpose of birth is not fulfilled. But if there is no child itself, you are not even giving an opportunity to a jiva. So we have to understand that the purpose of marriage is to give another jiva opportunity to practice Krishna consciousness. Now, whether that jiva is able to practice Krishna consciousness or not is not our responsibility. Our responsibility is to make sure that we practice and we inculcate the behavior. But as the child or the jiva grows up in that particular body, depending on the association he has, he or she, may get directed or misdirected. But at the same time, there is always the protection of the Lord. So even if somebody goes away on this path, still the Lord is very capable and merciful of bringing that particular person back into spiritual life. So the third section of this particular verse, which is putrahinam griham shunyam. So there is no point of marriage without a child. You should have a child and give an opportunity to another jiva to practice religiosity, to practice dharma. Sarve shunya daridrataha. This is the last section, which says that Sarve shunya daridrataha. So what is Sarve Shunya Daridratah? It means that everything is empty for a man who is poor or impoverished. So Sarve Shunya. Now we spoke about three Shunyas. One is Avidya Jivanam Shunyam. If you don't have knowledge of the self and the supreme, you're a zero. Next, Dikshunyascha Abandavaha. Now even if you have knowledge, but you don't have association of devotees, then you're zero. Next, Putrahinam Graham Shunyam. Now, if you have knowledge and if you have a place of association, then you should have people. So where will the people come? People will come from the Grihastha Ashrama. So we should actually, the Grihastha should produce children. Now, Putrahinam Griham Shunyam. And the fourth one is Sarve Shunya Daridratah. Now, if you have all this and you're still poor or impoverished, then everything is a big zero for you. So now the moment you hear this, there's a big confusion. What is the confusion? The confusion is, you said knowledge is important. Then you said that, a place for associating with the devotees of the Lord is important. Third, you need to have the devotees of the Lord, which means that there should be children of Krishna conscious parents. These three are done. And then finally, the verse says that Sarve Shunya Daridratah. That means, finally, if a person is poor, then everything is a big zero. Now, this is difficult to comprehend because a person has knowledge, a person has association, and in the family there are children, and that means that the society is growing, and the society has association, and the society has knowledge. But if the society does not have money, then, or if the society is poor, then everything is zero. That's what it says. But what is the meaning of Daridratah? That we have to understand clearly in terms of Shastras. So, according to Srimad Bhagavatam, Daridratah, in the 11th canto, it is mentioned that Daridro yastu asantushtaha. So, who is a poor man? Who is a poor man? This we have to understand. So, a poor man or a poor person is not a person who's poor financially. He's a person who's unsatisfied with his life. You give him a car, he says that, no, I should have had a better car. My friends have better car. This world, I've got the poorest. I'm not the richest. And hundreds of excuses he has. So anything you say, he compares everything. He compares his house, he compares his family, he compares his money, he compares his job, he compares his car. You allow him to compare. There is no end for his comparison. So Shastra say, Srimad Bhagavatam 11th canto, 19th chapter, 40th to 45th verses, there is a mention here very clearly which says that Daridro yastu asantushtaha. Daridro, who is a Daridra? Who is a poor person? A poor person is a person who's unsatisfied with his life. You give him anything, he's unsatisfied. So if you have whatever bank balance he has, he may have lakhs or crores or whatever he has, still he is asantushtaha. He is unsatisfied. This category of person is a very poor person. So let's summarize this particular verse. It says that avidya jivanam shunyam, a person without knowledge is zero. So knowledge of the self and the supreme is zero. Dikshunyascha abandavaha, a person with knowledge but without association is also zero. Then putrahinam griham shunyam, a family without children is zero. And sarve shunya daridratah. Finally, if having everything, you are still poor, impoverished, which means that you are not satisfied. Even after having everything, if you are not satisfied, that means that you are in a miserable zero condition. That means that you have no hope. So you have to understand that even after having everything, you should be satisfied. So you have nothing, still you should be satisfied because it is a mercy of the Lord. It is your own karma. So today, if you are performing active devotional service and if you are ensuring that you are doing a great job, that means that tomorrow you will have a better future. There is no doubt about that. But today, if you are destroying your own time in your own life, and tomorrow you get the reactions for that, and you start blaming the others, that is of no use. So the Niti Shastras have been given very clearly, especially this Chanakya Niti Shastra. This particular verse is very clear that you need to have knowledge, you need to have association, you need to have children in the society. Otherwise, there is no point of having knowledge, and from where will the association come? And then finally, you need to be satisfied. You should be santushta, not asantushta. So that is very important. Okay. Next, we'll go. So I was discussing in this particular verse, in the beginning of this particular, not this verse. We'll go to the 14th. I mean, we are still in the 14th verse. So I was breaking the 14th verse into two sections. The first section is the importance of Grihastha Ashrama, and the second section is the sanction of the Lord or the will of the Lord. So if you see the translation of this particular verse, it says that when all these Prachitas were ordered by their father to marry and beget children, they all entered into the ocean and practiced austerities and penances for 10,000 years. Thus, they worship the master of all austerity, the supreme personality of Godhead. So we have to understand here that one section we already covered. That means that the Prachitas were ordered by Prachina Barhi to marry and beget children. So that is very clear. So there is no doubt about what is the need for marriage and what is the goal of marriage. Very clear. You should have Krishna conscious children. And even the Chanakya Niti Shastra, I gave you the definition of how it has to be done. Okay. Now, the second section is in the same place, in the same translation, you can see that thus they worshipped the master of all austerity, the supreme personality of Godhead. So you may have everything, but at the same time, if you don't have the sanction of the Lord, then there is no point. You will not, the activity will not be complete anyway. So we should understand here that in the Bhagavad Gita also there is a mention that in the purport, Srila Prabhupada says that in the 5th chapter, 29th verse, it says that Bhoktaram Yagyatapasam Sarvaloka Maheshwaram. This verse we all know. Bhoktaram Suhridam Sarva Bhutanam Yatvamam Shantim Rachati. This verse most of us are familiar with. So the sages in the translation, Srila Prabhupada, of that particular verse, that is Bhoktaram Yagyatapasam, in that particular verse, Srila Prabhupada says, the sages knowing me as the ultimate purpose of all sacrifices. Or sorry, not Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada has written, and Srila Prabhupada has given the translation, and the Lord is saying that the sages know me as the ultimate purpose of all sacrifices and austerities, the supreme Lord of all planets and demigods, and the benefactor and well-wisher of all living entities. So, and only a person who knows that the Supreme Lord is the benefactor and well-wisher of all living entities, only such a person can attain peace from the pangs of material miseries. So here also the Prachitas are very clear that they are dependent on the Lord to execute any activity or any order which their father has given to. So even for the matter of children or matter of marriage, it is all by the sanction of the Lord. There are so many people who don't get married, despite them not being in the brahmacharya ashram. Also, they want to. They want to get into the grahastha ashram, but at the same time, there is no sanction of the Lord. So now, even if there is a sanction or not, but at the same time, we have to understand both are the mercy of the Lord. And for a materialist, it could be his own karma. But for a spiritual person, if he's still not able to get married, that means that it is the will of the Lord. So he should settle down in one of the ashramas. If he's still not getting married, it is not that he keeps trying, and believe that try and you will succeed, and then end up with some wrong lady and or a wrong man, and finally everything goes for a toss. Neither your spiritual life is there nor your material life. Both are destroyed. So we should be very careful that if it is not happening, don't pursue that. The goal of life is not to pursue a marriage or stay single. That's not the goal. The goal is very clear that whether you're single or whether you're married, the goal is you should be Krishna conscious. That is the most important. That is the bottom line. But at the same time, if you're married, there is no question of staying single. I mean, single in the sense the husband and wife are married, but they don't have children. There is no question of that, because that is mentioned very clearly in the Shastras here. Okay. Next, like I was saying, that the benefactor, finally, the sages know, or the devotees of the Lord know, that the supreme well-wisher and benefactor of all the activities is Lord Sri Krishna. That is what is mentioned in the verse, which is Bhoktaram Yagyatapasam Sarvaloka Maheshwaram. Next, in the same purport, Srila Prabhupada also says that Aho bata swapachoto gariya ya jivagre vartate nama tubhyam tepus tapaste juhubu shashnurarya brahmanuchur nama grananti yete. So it doesn't matter. Now, if somebody is born in a low family, now Srila Prabhupada, when he was with his disciples in Vrindavan, so some of the disciples actually went, the Western disciples, they went to a particular temple, and the pujari was doing arti, and after the arti, he interacted with those devotees, the Western disciples of Srila Prabhupada, and he said that you're doing a great activity. The pujari of that other temple in Vrindavan, he interacted with the disciples of Srila Prabhupada, the Western disciples, and he said that I appreciate what you're doing. You're doing a great activity. You are helping in promoting dharma. So next life you will get a chance to take birth in India, and you will become a pujari like me, and then you will go back to Godhead. This is what he said. Now the disciples of Srila Prabhupada, they were actually a bit concerned, because they thought that the Sankirtan movement was everything, that Sankirtan movement itself can take you back to Godhead. But this pujari is saying that Now you people have come to India and you're propagating or helping the dharma, you're carrying forward the dharma and you're preaching. So next life you will get a birth in India. So they were a bit concerned and they went back to Srila Prabhupada and they said, Prabhupada, we went to one of these temples and the pujari there said that since you are practicing dharma in this life and since you are propagating dharma, next life you will take birth in an Indian family and you will become a pujari like me and then you will go back to Godhead. So Srila Prabhupada said, you go back to that pujari and you tell him the same thing what he said in a different way. You tell him that this life you are a pujari, and because you are a pujari, my spiritual master told me that next life you will get a chance to take birth in the Western world and participate in the Harinam Sankirtan and go back to Godhead. So this is the actual approach. He says that anybody, so Srila Prabhupada says that if you're in the Sankirtana movement, that is all perfection. And it will make sure that that is good enough. If your consciousness is perfect at the time of death, and if you're part of the Sankirtan movement, that is enough to take you back to Godhead. And there is no other qualification required. So this Srila Prabhupada established in that particular discussion. So again, in this particular verse, here we can see that it says that how glorious are those tongues which are chanting your holy name, even if they are born in a family of dog eaters. Such persons are also worshipable. So here the verse very clearly says that even if you are born in the lowest of families or any family, now a meat-eating family, sometimes people say that a Muslim family, a person who's in a Muslim family or in some other family, he's a low person, which means that he's a person who, according to us, he's a person who's from a low background because he eats meat. Now, for them, if you go to their place of worship, they might say that the Hindu people are from the low background. But what is the meaning of a person who's from a low background? A person who does not have value for other jivas or other living entities. He is from a low background. It's not about Hindu or Muslim. So if you don't have value for other jivas or living entities, then you are from a low background. Even if such a person, being from a low background, establishes himself or is able to have a relationship with the devotees of the Lord and is able to chant in some way or the other, is able to chant the holy name of the Lord, then his life is considered to be perfect. So he will also be able to come out of those sins that he's doing. So even if a person is born as a Chandala or a low birth, but by the grace of the Lord, if he gets an opportunity to chant, then he will slowly be liberated from those positions also where he's undergoing miseries, where he's bound to undergo misery. Okay, so this is what we have to understand, that the Sankirtana movement is the greatest of all, and it can relieve people from so many sufferings. And at the same time, what we have to understand in context to this particular verse is that in the previous ages, in the Satya Yuga, what tapasya you have to go under the ocean and perform for 10,000 years, in this Yuga, by simply sitting in your own house and just remembering the Lord, by chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. By just chanting, you get the same benefit. So it is so easy, it is so easily accessible and so easily provided by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in this age that we have to take benefit. And another reference is, obviously we all know about Haridas Thakur, and he was nominated as Namacharya. So a person from a Muslim or a Mohammedan background becomes the Namacharya, or he becomes the Acharya of Harinam. So which very clearly shows that irrespective of whatever background you are from, you are capable of becoming the topmost devotee of the Lord by chanting the holy names and perfecting your lives. So that's the summary of this particular verse. We'll go to the next verse, which is the final verse in discussion today. And the verse is Yaduktam pati drishtena girishena prasidata tadhyayanto japantascha pujayantascha sayyata. Okay, so the meaning is yat, that, uktam, said, pati, on the way, drishtena, while meeting, girishena, by Lord Shiva, prasidata, by being very much satisfied, tat, that, dhyayantaha, meditating, japantacha, chanting, also, pujyantacha, worshipping also, sayyataha, with great control. So now we discussed in the previous two verses about Prachina Barhi and Shatadruti and their 10 children, and how the 10 children were ordered to go and get married and beget children. But for doing that, they wanted to execute austerities and 10,000 years of austerities under the water. Now, Is it possible to just go and execute austerities? The father gave you an order and you started going and practicing. It is not possible. So who is the most important factor here? The most important factor here is the presence of a spiritual master. So here we can see in the translation, Srila Prabhupada says, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Translation, Srila Prabhupada says, when all the sons of Prachina Barhi left home to execute austerities, they met Lord Shiva, who out of great mercy instructed them about the absolute truth. All the sons of Prachina Barhi meditated upon the instructions of Lord Shiva, chanting and worshipping them with great care and attention. Next, we'll read the purport. It is clear that to perform austerities and penances, or for that matter, any form of devotional service, one has to be guided by a spiritual master. Here, it is clearly stated that the 10 sons of Maharaja Prachina Barhi were favored by the appearance of Lord Shiva, who, out of his great kindness, gave them instructions regarding the execution of austerities. Lord Shiva actually became the spiritual master of the 10 sons, and in turn, his disciples took his words so seriously that simply by meditating upon his instructions, dhyayantaha, they became perfect. This is the secret of success. After being initiated and receiving the orders of the spiritual master, the disciple should unhesitatingly think about the instructions or orders of the spiritual master and should not allow himself to be disturbed by anything else. This is also the verdict of Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, who, while explaining the verse of Bhagavad Gita, beginning, Vyavasayatmika Buddhir Ekeha Kurunandanaha, Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, text 41, points out that the order of the spiritual master is the life substance of the disciple. The disciple should not consider whether he's going back home, back to Godhead. His first business should be to execute the order of a spiritual master. Thus, a disciple should always meditate on the order of the spiritual master, and that is perfectional meditation. Not only should he meditate upon that order, but he should find out the means by which he can perfect worship and execute it. So it is very clear here. Now, somebody might ask, what is the need for a guru? So here we can see that the need for Krishna conscious children, but more importantly, the need for Krishna conscious parents, and most importantly, the needs of the requirement for a spiritual master, so that everybody is practicing and are on the path of devotion and become successful. So we have to understand here that the importance of spiritual master. Lord Shiva is the spiritual master of the Prachitas. So he is guiding them how to achieve success in this particular austerity. So we have to understand that Srila Prabhupada is saying, what is the secret of success? To become successful in this particular verse, Srila Prabhupada says in the purport that what is the secret of success? He says that dhyayantaha, a person who's meditating on the Supreme Lord, who's meditating on the instructions of the spiritual master, who's meditating and always thinking of how to satisfy my spiritual master, that person is actually the person who knows the secret of success. So you should fulfill the orders of your spiritual master. That is the secret of your spiritual success. Again, in the Guru Ashtaka that we sing in our temples in the mornings, we very clearly say every day, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in those 8 verses has very clearly mentioned that Yasya Prasada Bhagavat Prasada, Yasya Prasada Nagati Kutopi, Dhyayanstuvam Staseshas Trasandhyam Vande Guru Shri Charanara. By the satisfaction of the spiritual master, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is satisfied. And by not satisfying the spiritual master, there is no chance of being promoted to the Krishna conscious platform. So we should therefore meditate and pray for the mercy of the spiritual master 3 times a day. Dhyayanstuvam Stasya Yashas Trisandhyam 3 times a day, and offer respectful obeisances unto him, unto the spiritual master. So this is very important. So dhyayantaha, in this particular verse, the most important thing is meditate. We should always be thinking of how can I satisfy my spiritual master? Because if I satisfy my spiritual master, then my Krishna conscious life is perfect. Now, to satisfy the spiritual master, I should get the mercy of the spiritual master. How to get the mercy of the spiritual master? That is mentioned in many verses, but at the same time, I gave you a reference of the Guru Ashtaka that we sing, where it says that you have to please by following his instructions, and we should always offer our obeisances to the spiritual master, and we should always meditate on the instructions given by the spiritual master. In that way, we will be. Section of this particular verse is the punch. It is not just dhyayantaha. That means it's just thinking always that my guru said that go and preach the Chaitanya Prabhu's mission, go and preach to 100 people. So I'm not always thinking, just not thinking, I'm keeping quiet and sitting at home. So Srila Prabhupada says in the last, if you can see in this particular translation, very clearly, Srila Prabhupada says that not only in the last two lines, you can see that not only should he meditate upon the, not only should he meditate upon the order, but he should find out the means by which he can perfectly worship and execute it. So just meditating that, my spiritual master said this, let me keep thinking about that and I'll go back to Krishna. No, you should find means to execute the order of the spiritual master. You should find means. Like how Srila Prabhupada found means. Srila Prabhupada was ordered to go to the West and preach. He found means. He undertook all the difficulties. He found the means. But yes, he's a pure soul. But still, it's a clear instruction from Srila Prabhupada here in the translation that don't just meditate on the instructions of the spiritual master. Go and execute it. Find out ways and means to execute it. That is the conclusion. So when the Prachitas actually followed the instructions of Lord Shiva and executed the orders of their father, Prachina Barhi. So thank you very much. Pancha kalpatarubhyascha, kripa sindhubhya evacha, patitanam pavanebhyo, vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Ananta koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So if anyone has any questions, please ask.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, thank you very much for the wonderful class. You covered points on what is meant by real perfection, what is real dharma, importance of Grihasthasam and raising Krishna conscious children, about what is real knowledge and who is a poor person, and about the glories and importance of Harinam Sankirtan. Thank you very much for helping us recollect these wonderful points. Devotees can unmute themselves to share any reflections, or if they have any questions, please ask, Prabhuji.
I hope everybody understood what I said.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you for the wonderful class. I mean, what really struck me is in terms of a few of them, but one thing which just really struck me was the person who is ever unsatisfied is said to be poor. That's really very nice. I mean, it's something which you should know. And the purpose of Grihasthasrama and the significance of having children who are devotees is very, very important. Thank you so much, Prabhu.
Yeah, something there, Prabhu. If you see, many people, there were some critics of Gaur Gopal Prabhu who say that, Prabhu preaches and does not talk much about Krishna and all that. If you actually see every message of Prabhu, it may look like an English message, but he's actually connecting it to the Shastras. In one of the lectures of Gaur Gopal Prabhu, he was saying that it was a common general audience, not devotees, but it was a general audience, and he was telling that some people are so poor that all they have is money. I think all of you would have heard this. Now, the most important thing here is that was actually in reference to this particular verse, where Dharidrata means in the same reference, actually is talking in the same context, that people who are unsatisfied are the people who are actually poor, not the people who don't have money. So like this, we should also see from the Shastric point of view, when somebody is speaking, we should also see that, where in Shastra and how he is connecting it to the Shastras. So some people may not understand. If you put 10 shlokas in front of them, they might not understand the context. So it's better to tell them in plain English what it is. So that way it helps us. Thank you, Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhu. Thank you.
Krishna Prabhuji, thank you. So many wonderful points to understand. Prabhu, this Prachitas, is it a family name or it has some significance, significant meaning, Prabhu?
So here in the verse, it says that it is, like a title given to these 10 children, Prachitas.
It's a family name.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I wouldn't call it as a family name. Basically, it's a title given to the 10 children, Prachitas. So they were called as Prachitas. That's what it says in the Prabhu.
Okay, Prabhu. Thank you very much. Prabhu, one more doubt I had. They went to do penance for marriage or general like that? Because we can't ask the Lord for to fulfill any of our desire.
So it is not fulfilling their desires. Actually, they are fulfilling desires of their. So now, if you see, the goal was at that point of time, the goal was to increase the population in the society. If you see, the background to all this is because the Prachitas, or if you see Prachina Barhi, and if he was ordered Brahma, okay. So the goal given was to increase the population in the society. So it is not just, they are for their sense gratification, they are producing 10 children, or, they want to increase their population in the society, they are producing 10 children. They are, by the instructions of the Lord, it is the will of the Lord to have more population in the human society or in the creation. So this section comes in the creation part. the goal is to have more living entities in the human form. So for that particular reason, they were executing an order on behalf of their father, but actually the father was executing the order of Brahma, and Brahma was Brahma was actually fulfilling the order of Lord Krishna. So that is what is the order. So it is not some personal desire they had, but they are actually fulfilling the will of the Lord.
So for that, they had to do penance for 10,000.
Yes. The thing is, like I said, without the sanction of the Lord, it is not possible. We all know that it is not possible to execute any activity which was without the sanction of the Lord. So that's what I said, the reference of Bhuktaram, Yagyatapasam, Savaloka Maheshwaram. So Prabhupada has very clearly said that a person who's a sage or knows very clearly that all austerities result in the satisfaction of without the satisfaction of Supreme Lord, there is no austerity which is successful. Without the spiritual master and without the will of the Lord, it is not possible to execute that austerity or become successful.
Yes, Prabhuji, that's what I'm confused here. So we will do devotional service continuously throughout our life. Whatever is for us, God will sanction. We just can't do some penance or something for some particular desire, or to fulfill some that's what I'm confused.
No, not so, Mataji. The objective here is that the Prachitas, the Prachitas didn't have the desire of marrying and having children. Here it is very clearly said that Prachina Barhi ordered them. So the father is ordered. It is the instruction of the father. So the instructions of the father. Why? Because they have to increase the population. At that population is less, so they have to increase the population in the world. And for increasing the population and following the order of the father, they went ahead and did penance, because it is not possible. First, you have to find a match, or you have to find a person or a lady to whom you can get married to. Who will make the arrangement for that? Did we make the arrangement of, we think that, we went and got married to XYZ person. It may be, but the point is, it is just your feeling that, I chose my, a bride or a bridegroom. It is not, it is by the arrangement of what person is present there for you. If that person himself was not present, then what will you do? So here, it is not a sense gratification. It is not, the reason is not so that, like I said, in the Brahmacharya ashram, before getting into the 25 years, we are doing tapasya to know how to behave in Krishna consciousness in the Grihastha ashram. So we should not let our senses loose. So tapasya is required, even if you want to get married, or even if you want any activity, and if you want to remain Krishna consciousness, in Krishna consciousness, then tapasya is required. So here, one, you are fulfilling the order of the spiritual master. Second, you are fulfilling the order of the father. Third, without the sanction of the Lord, nothing works. So keeping these three aspects in mind, even simple activity like having marriage and begetting children can be a great calamity in your spiritual life. If you marry the wrong person and if you have the wrong set of children, you're destroyed. Your spiritual life is destroyed. So you have to do tapasya. So don't think that it is a material requirement that, I'm asking for children. You're not asking for children. You're asking to practice, maintain your consciousness. You give me the right set of family so that I can maintain my consciousness. That is what you're asking for.
Thank you, Prabhuji. I'll try to understand, Prabhuji. Thank you.
Hi Krishna, Dandot Pranam Prabhu. Wonderful class, and very nicely you explained about the Gravasthasam. And what strikes me is, who's poor? Your definition of poor, one who is not asantushta, you said. Very nice, Prabhu. Dandot Pranam.
Yes. So it's not my definition, but it's Chanakya Pandit's definition of asantushta.
Yes.
But he says asantushta, but in Srimad Bhagavatam there is an explanation of who's asantushta in the 11th canto. So I was just connecting both.
What was the reference? 11th canto reference?
If you want the exact reference, it is 11th canto.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, while you are searching, I'm just pasting one question which was directed to me. So, it was typed to me, but it is to you.
Yes. I'll just answer this. So, Mataji, the answer, so the reference is 11th canto, 19th chapter, between 40th to 45th verse. You will see these verses where it says who's asantushta, who's unsatisfied person.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you, Dandot.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, Prabhu, what is the next question?
Yeah, it's in the chat window. Do you want me to read out? Like Hare Krishna Prabhuji, it was told if a man is not getting married despite trying, can take spiritual way and be in Krishna consciousness in brahmachari itself. How does it go in case of women?
So women have no choice; they have to get married. I mean, see, a woman by default, a woman can only produce children. A man cannot. So we have to understand that if the society, if the generations have to move ahead, it's the responsibility or duty of a woman to make sure that she is mentally ready to have children. So there is no question of women being single. She has to get married. She has been given the power to carry forward the generations. So she should take that as a blessing of the Lord. Is that the answer? Is that the question, Prabhu? Or
yeah, it's basically the point there is if male tries to get married but is unable to, I think. So then he can be progress in Krishna consciousness by be staying in brahmachari ashram. So does that same apply to a women?
Understood, Prabhu. So if
despite trying.
Okay. So the point here is that if somebody wants to get married and it does not find a suitable lady to get married, then can he continue? So first of all, are you ready to accept it as the will of the Lord? If you are not accepting it as the will of the Lord, then everything gets defeated. Because first of all, if you're not ready to digest that, this is the will of the Lord. If you're trying, if you're 20 years, 25 years, or 30 years maximum, and you're not able to find a girl, that's still okay. You still have some time. But if you're 45 years and you're still unsatisfied and you're still thinking, oh, still I have a chance, there is Bharat matrimony, there is that matrimony, there is shadi.com, I'll still keep searching. Is that the goal of life? So intelligent person is very clear that, I should not waste my time in search of a girl. I should not waste my time in search of a girl. I should utilize my time in search of the Lord. And the devotees, serving the devotees of the Lord. So that should be the goal. So you should not be too worried about I couldn't get married, I didn't get married. So it's all about just how many. I mean, even if you get married, if you let's say that even if you get married, what are you trying to do? Are you trying to for sense gratification, or is it the goal is to serve the Lord? If the goal is to serve the Lord, then it doesn't matter whether you're married or not married. For a man, I mean, you should. If you want to enter Gravasthasam, you should get married. But if you're not getting the right girl, so don't be depressed or worried that everything is destroyed in my life. I have nothing, no goal ahead. No, the goal is Krishna. So it doesn't have any bearing on whether you get married or not. And for women, you have to get married. There's no question of staying single. But unfortunately, again, if it's a matter of karma, or sometimes some women, they get married and they lose their husband at a young age. So what do you do? So there are so many things which happens. So we cannot question the will of the Lord or the sanction of the Lord. At the same time, we cannot even say whether it is if you are perfectly practicing devotees, we should accept it as the will of the Lord. But if you are non-devotees, we should just know that it is karma. It is just our own karma that we have to lose. Some people have children, but they lose the children at an early age. Some children die as when they are born. Some children die when they are 5 or 6 years. In the initial stages itself, they leave their body. Some children are born with defects in the body. So it is all part of karma. There is no way that you can say that, no, just to escape from that, how many years, how many lifetimes will you escape? If you say that, no, let me not produce children because I'm afraid that, if a dumb child is born, or if an impoverished child is born, or somebody else, so you cannot escape. This life, you may escape. Next life, you may be again forced to do it. So it's not a matter of choice. It's a matter of, a karma. One is for the non-devotees, it is a matter of karma. You will have to suffer one way or the other. But for the devotees, you have to accept it as the will of the Lord.
Thank you, Broji, for that detailed explanation to this question. I think in the interest of the time, we'll conclude the session for today. Thank you again for your time and your insights. We'll conclude with Vaishnava Pranams. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya cha patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Bhakta Vrinda ki jai.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you, everyone. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.